Hello and welcome back to the Fish and Chip podcast. I'm your host Fish.
And I'm your host Chips. And on this episode of the podcast, we're going to be doing a top 10 list on our favourite TV shows. So what's going to happen is me and Fish are going to do top 10 lists, say our top 10 lists each accordingly. So we're going to go, I say my number 10, he says his 10, I say my 9, and so on.
Yeah,
and so on.
But first we're just gonna do some honorable mentions.
Yeah.
Because we both watched too much television because we both have no lives. So
yeah,
there was I had a list of 30 when I started out making my list, and I had to cut it down.
Only 3 honorable mentions.
Only 3 honorable mentions. Yeah, we're not talking about them. We're just gonna list them out. So my honorable mentions then would be Blue Bloods, Fargo, and Black Mirror, which are all very good shows, all on various social or Netflix and stuff like that. You can watch them all.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And mine will be my honorable mentions are Gotham, the US Office, and Black Mirror.
Why not the UK Office, Shane?
Because I haven't
Ricky
seen
Gervais won't be happy with you.
Well, he sold his soul to America, so he can feck off. All right.
He kind of did, in fairness. He also, Stephen Merchant, how you gotta do him like that,
Mm-hmm.
All right, so do you want to get right into it? So we don't.
Yeah. So you start off with your number 10, and then I will, since you started off with your.
All right, so I'll start off with my number 10, and my number 10 is it's my only comedy series on my list because I'm not a very funny person.
I have so many.
I hate laughing. So my number 10 is Scrubs. So if anyone doesn't know what Scrubs is, because it's actually been off the air for a long time, it's the American comedy series that made Zach Braff famous. So it's about basically a load of medical students. It starts off with a load of new medical interns coming into a hospital, and then it just kind of follows their lives for 8 years. So it goes on because there's only 8 seasons, because the 9th season doesn't count because it's trash.
I've seen a few.
Have you watched it all?
Not all of it.
You should watch it, dude.
I've seen a load of it. But I never really got into it. I don't know why I didn't. It was like one of the shows I see on telly, and I'd watch a few episodes and really like it, and I just never got into it.
Yeah, oh man, it's you would actually love it as well. It's the best medical show on television. I don't as in Grey's Anatomy fans fight me. It's not maybe not medically accurate, but it's in terms of a comedy drama that's set in a hospital with so many lovable characters. Was so consistent for 8 years. The 9th season is trash, right? It's proper trash, but it shouldn't have even existed. They tried to have an entire new cast in it, and they replaced a lot of people. JD was Zach Braff character was in it for 2 or 3 episodes, then he leaves. It's just it's pure trash. And the finale for Scrubs, because we're not getting into spoilers, this is more just talking about why we like it so much. The finale to Scrubs is one of the best finales I've ever seen. It was the type of show that when I was younger, I would come home from secondary school and I would watch 4 episodes every day, of it, which is it's kind of those are kind of shit numbers for we've all kind of because of Netflix and stuff, marathoning TV shows is so popular. But back in the day, watching 4 episodes of one TV show when you have your life going on and stuff was actually a lot, in fairness, back in 2010 2009, so it was it was one of the first shows I actually marathoned properly, and I've probably seen it about 3 or 4 times fully, I'd say. So it's a top show. So I think we'll go into your number 10.
So actually my number 10 is also a comedy series. 13 Reasons Why.
Oh, what a comedy, man.
What a comedy. Oh, there's nothing like seeing a girl cut her wrists.
Jesus Christ. we do not in any way condone suicide.
No.
Seek help.
He doesn't.
Seek help. Okay? Even though, in fairness, if you did listen to us talk sometimes,
you might
especially
think
Shane, you might think that Shane is on the brink.
Don't psychologically analyze me, okay?
Yeah.
God, Dad.
A lot of psychiatrists have tried and they've all quit.
No, they've all killed themselves.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate.
No, they died under mysterious circumstances.
Yeah.
Yeah, but 13 Reasons Why is on my list because I felt like I couldn't not have it on my list because I make too many jokes about it.
Yeah, but it's not because it's a bad show.
It's not because it's a bad show.
It's a great show.
It's a great show. The concept's really good in it. It's so basically the main character in Hannah Baker, we start off with her tape start playing and she's like, okay, so if you're listening to this, I've killed myself and you're on my tape. So it's one of those things where you're just trying to, you're following the footsteps of Clive, the main character, and he's I think it's Clive. I couldn't give a shit about names. I'm terrible with names. But he's like the one. He's the character you're focusing on, and he's like, what the hell did I do to get on her tape?
Yeah.
Because he seemed you follow him and you're like, oh, he's such a good, outstanding, upstanding fella, and it's like, your brain is going through, how the hell did this happen, and how she killed herself, and how she came to the conclusion that the best thing to do is just kill herself, and the fact that that she felt he was responsible in some shape or form.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't want to get too into it. I would say though that going into show, you kind of, there is a disclaimer is that you kind of, if you're not in a great place, that you should really you should stay away from it, or you should watch it on a weekly basis, one episode a week, and not binge watch it like I did all at once, because it shouldn't be a binge show on Netflix. It really shouldn't. It should have been released episodically, because it's one of those shows where people have killed themselves after watching it, because it is so fucking depressing. I mean, obviously there's other attributes that come into it, but that show, it's just so depressing. You go and you see a character and you know right away that she's dead.
Does it, like, because obviously suicide is such a serious topic, one that like has gotten maybe not a lot of press in the past, but it's starting to get more like recently. Like, does it deal with that subject matter like respectively, or is it?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know. There's some scenes in it. I myself, and I'm not one for censorship, but there's some scenes in it where you're like, maybe they should have pushed the camera away. Like, I mean, actually, this isn't the spoiler. I think this is something people should know. Is that the end? You see how the Hannah Baker kills herself. You see the way she goes through it, and I think that's something that people need to know, that you actually are going to see her cut her wrist, because that should not be. I myself think that should not be on television how they did it, because they literally gave a guide on how she went through it. She cleaned up her belongings, and she went to the bathtub, and she got her. She had previously gotten a razor blade from her dad's shop, and she went to the bathtub in her old rags and filled the bathtub and just cut her wrists. And then the mother started walking in while the floor was flooded and was lifting her in arms. That is not a scene that should be gone through completely.
Yeah.
They should have done it in a bit. They should have done it a bit less dramatically. I feel that that's one thing that is very disrespectful to do. That they should have done it. They should have been a bit more careful with how they were showing this type of thing. I don't know. Like, I mean, I really enjoyed the show. I just think that it's one of those things where it's like this. I myself, it's not going to affect me, but it's going to affect some people, and I don't think that's right.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. Like, I think that maybe they went too far with it all. Like, I haven't watched it because I just like, I don't know, I don't really want to put myself in that mindset, like for people, because I mean, a lot of people I know have like suffered with mental health issues, like including myself at certain times of my life. So to actually put yourself in that mindset, like, willingly, I'm not really sure if it's something I want to do, but I could see why people like it, and why you recommended it, or why it's on your list as number 10. So I think, I'll jump onto my number 9. So my number 9, people are going to get so annoyed at us because Shane hasn't even got this on his list.
Yeah.
And I put it as my number 9, whereas a lot of people said this is the greatest TV show ever made. Like, I know at least one person that said it's their favorite of all time, or like their favorite piece of art ever. So my number 9 is Breaking Bad.
Breaking Bad. You see, that show for me, it's just questionable. Yeah. I just find I never really got into Walter White, the main character, that much. I just found he was just. I mean, it was designed for him to be a bit of grow into being a bit of a fucking arsehole. But I just didn't understand him. Yeah. And I like characters, villains, heroes that you can understand their motives and their way through their reasons. I just couldn't. I mean, most people felt that they could understand it, but me personally felt that that his motives weren't even good enough to me and stuff.
I felt kind of disconnected.
Yeah. I don't know. It was one of those things for me. But for someone who had enjoyed it, why is it you
So why do I like Breaking Bad? I think that, so this is my favorite list, right? So I'm not necessarily like, so like some of these maybe aren't as good quality wise as Breaking Bad, because Breaking Bad quality wise is in direction, acting, writing, or like everything, like the way that it's just everything about the way it's shot and made and produced is like spot on. Like it's one of the best made television shows I would ever say. Like it is on the level of like any of the best Hollywood films.
Yeah.
Like that's what I would say. And I actually did empathize with Walter White, and I did understand his motives and stuff. But I can see why people didn't like it. Like because I've heard a couple of people other than you say that they weren't a big fan of him as a character. Yeah. I think he's very well developed, but also then like why it's maybe not so high up on my list. I don't know. It's simply just like something can be made perfectly, because I think it is like almost a perfect show for me, right? Like something can be made nearly perfectly, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I'll enjoy it as much as something that has a bit of an edge to it. Like because obviously this has an edge to it, but like for me there are just other shows that like there's something more memorable about them, more memorable about them. And like sometimes something memorable might be like something not necessarily that great, but it could be like the thing that draws you to it, like, or just a special thing. I also think that season 2 and 3 of Breaking Bad are kind of boring.
Yeah.
It's got a class start, and the last 2 seasons are fucking unbelievable. 2 of the best seasons of a TV show you'll ever watch. But season 2 and 3 are ridiculously boring at times. Like, just my own opinion. Like, anyway. So yeah. So you want to move on to your number 9?
My number 9 is Lost. So it's actually it's actually far back. Like you, like if you know me, you'd expect it to be a bit higher up on my list. But Lost is a show that was one of the first shows that I properly got into and connected with. It's like because Jason introduced me to Lost, really.
Yeah, and like it was second or third year. Secondary school.
Yeah, in secondary school or high school, like they say in America. But Lost, like it's very like I mean. It had such great seasons. So how would you explain Lost? It's like basically they crash a plane and it's under mysterious circumstances and they're stuck on an island and they're kind of trying to figure out how to get out. But also there's this kind of they're kind of uncovering the mystery of how they got there as well, kind of a thing. I'm not really going to go too in depth, even though it's been out for so long. If you haven't watched it, you're not going to see it.
Well, no, I wouldn't necessarily do that. Like I think that honestly, it's definitely not too late to watch Lost. Like it's got 6 seasons. They're all pretty solid. Like a lot of people say the quality went down a bit, but I wouldn't agree with that necessarily. Yeah. And you'll be hearing about my thoughts about it more because it's not a surprise. It's gonna be on my list somewhere, so you'll have to just see where. Like, but I think that like we'll probably talk about more in depth about it later on. Yeah,
that's why
in the show.
I'm holding back on it.
Yeah.
So
it's fair.
You go for your number 8 now?
Yeah, my number 8. So my number 8 is a show that I would say not a lot of people have heard about. It's criminally underrated. I only know 2 people that have ever watched it. The person sitting next to me is one of them.
Oh, yeah?
And then my history school teacher in 5th and 6th year is the other person that had watched it. So I talked to her randomly about it in class one day, in the middle of class, as you do.
The show.
So the show is Banshee.
Banshee,
Banshee, man. Oh, Banshee, right? If you were looking for like a police, not a police show, like I don't even like a crime show, kind of like. This is the show for you. If you are a Breaking Bad fan, you will like Banshee, I would say.
Or if you're not.
Or if you're not, you would also like Banshee. If you're a person that breathes oxygen and drinks water, or even alcohol, possibly, because water is for losers.
Yeah, exactly.
And who needs it to survive? Who really needs water? No one. You will like Banshee, because any air-breathing human that enjoys good television will like Banshee as a show. So it's only 4 seasons long, not a very long show. Probably, I think, about 35 episodes long altogether.
Yeah.
And it's like, it is 40-minute episodes, but I mean, compared to a lot of shows that you'd watch, like The Wire, like a lot of other masterpieces, I would say, like The Wire, Sopranos, like shows I've never seen, I need to watch, but have been acclaimed by critics. Like this, I would say, is probably up there for me in terms of like just pure quality of a TV show. The reason that's so far down the list is because I haven't seen it for a while, and also because it maybe does kind of suffer from the same thing as Breaking Bad. It's that it's perfectly made, but sometimes maybe doesn't stick with you as much as it could. Also, the fact that the first 3 seasons are very alike, and then season 4 is like completely different. Because of just events that happen in the show. But yeah, so if you're into like the show is, I'm just gonna give you a quick synopsis, like a 2-second, 2-line synopsis. But basically, the story is about a guy, Lucas Hood, that gets released from prison, and he is trying to find this girl that he was seeing before he went to prison, and he finds her, but like because of life progressing on, they're not an item anymore. It's kind of like she's moved on from him, so he's trying to find what to do next in his life. So he decides to, so basically he's drinking in a bar one day. New sheriff of this town, Banshee, walks into the bar. Like literally his first day in the town, this is the first place he's gone to the bar before he goes to like his hotel or whatever. And the bar, the new sheriff gets into a fight and gets killed, along with two criminals from this like criminal guy who's like a mainstay on the show, like from his organization, these two criminals. So then Lucas Hood decides to, instead of reporting it, to hide the bodies and to basically assume this sheriff's identity.
Yeah,
it's such a good show. Like I think if you're looking for something new to watch, I think Banshee should definitely be something you consider. Out of most things on my list, Banshee would be probably one of the things I'd recommend most to you. So you want to go into your 8th, Shane?
Yeah, we're going to my number 8, which is actually This Is Us. And This Is Us is I guess it's a family film, family TV series. I don't want to, because I watched it going in blind when they first from the moment they released the first episode. And I was just blown away by even the first episode of how they kind of, how they do this thing of kind of connecting characters in this way. It's like they kind of paint a picture for you, and they just show you, they just bring these characters together and unite them in a kind of a very beautiful and kind of artistic way.
Yeah.
I don't know, like I don't really want to give a proper explanation of it, because this show is one of those that I think it's better going in blind.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And you kind of get you kind of have a nice you can interpret it better on your own, rather than have someone else explain it to you beforehand.
I'm just gonna spoil my list because this is my number 7, so I'm gonna be talking about it straight away afterwards. We're just gonna talk about it together.
So number
instead.
7 is
but we're still talking about both our picks together because it's just easier way to do it. So my number 7 is also This Is Us. It could have probably been higher, but honestly, it's a really hard show to pin down sometimes. Like it's a show about like life. So obviously it changes a lot. So like that, with a list of this nature, like sometimes a show like this might be higher, sometimes it might be lower, because it really depends on your mindset, because it's a very dramatic show.
They connect in everyone. I feel anyone from any lifestyle will at least connect with one character in a sense. You kind of you're going to find this kind of, maybe you're not going through the same exact situations as a particular character, but you kind of understand their motives, and well, I wouldn't say motives, their kind of, outlook at life and stuff, and how these things kind of happened to them, and how they went back into the slums or whatever, or how they overcame it. It's just one of those shows that it's like it's phenomenal.
It is. It's very. I think like the way that it shows just life as in its rawest form is it's spectacular. I think that it's also because it expands itself over multiple generations, and I think because of that they get a lot of different groups of people. So like I watch this show because I'm in college a lot. Like when I go home, I try to use my time wisely with my parents. So a lot of the time we watch television together. So this is a show that I started watching with my parents. But like I think I watched season 1 by myself, and then season 2 I watched all of that with my parents. Yeah. So it became a thing of like it took us 4 months to watch the first 9 episodes because of life. And then because life just managed to work itself out, we watched the second 9 episodes of season 2 in 2 days.
Yeah.
So it's one of those shows that like it's an experience, and I think that's why, like, because it's so different to anything else you'll watch, like literally, like it's like in the modern world we live in, where it's all like superheroes and explosions and shit. This show is so subtle, and man,
the best way of saying it is it brings a basic concept and gives a very unique perspective on it.
It does, yeah. I think that the writing is as well just like really allows for that to happen, and the performances is top notch. Like it's no wonder that like it's won Golden Globes and stuff like that for its performances. So do you we'll move on to your number 7. So
my number 7 is Limitless. So the TV show obviously, like there's a movie as well, Limitless, and they they actually it's kind of follows on from that, but you're following a different character. There's a different main character in this. Like in the movie it was Bradley Cooper, and in this it is, I actually can't think of the name of the actor.
The actor's name is Jake McDormand. I can't remember what his character's name is though.
he's like developed so much in the show. Basically, the show is where you're given it. Basically, there's this pill, and you when you take it, you become like incredibly intelligent.
It unlocks 100% of your brain function. Yeah, which is like we as humans we only use like 10% at a time. Yeah. So to be able to use 100% is like obviously it will give you a massive advantage over anyone. Like so it gives you an advantage on like learning languages and like learning how to do different things and just how to like because so do you want to kind of say what like the way that they kind of set up the show is in terms of like every week it's kind of like
every week it kind of it develops kind of like basically the main character kind of becomes like a kind of a specialist for the CIA.
Yeah,
is that?
I think it's the CIA or the FBI.
Or the FBI, I think.
One of the two. I can't
remember. He becomes
a
specialist. Is the best way. He's brought in as a kind of a sort of specialist for the FBI because he is apparent. He seems to be immune to the pill because it has its side effects of an extreme hangover and eventual death.
Yeah,
and it basically there's a side plot of how he became immune, and you kind of and they basically don't focus too much on that, which is good. They kind of make it like they kind of find a even balance of how how he goes through his FBI life and how he goes through like his like handling how he got there and having to deal with these kind of dodgy characters that gave him this pill.
Yeah, exactly. I think that, and also the way that because it's on my list as well. Like I know I'm kind of spoiling it, but like I'm not really going to talk about it when it's on my list. I'm just going to mention it. But it kind of the way that it develops as well. It's almost like a police procedural where they're like solving all these different cases a lot of the time. But they do it in such an interesting way because of just the way that, again, because I'm like a sucker for like directing, like so that's it's my thing. Like that and writing are like my things in entertainment, like acting as well as I'm basically just naming every fucking way that a thing comes together. But like directing and writing are like my number 1 and 2 things. Like 100, like not in that particular order because writing is probably my biggest thing for a TV show. And this show is like so well directed and so well written.
Yeah.
Actually, they get it's the director I think of the first 2 Spider-Man films. Or Spider-Man 1, 2, and 3, I think. Or no, is it the guy that directed the new Spider-Man? I can't remember. They get him to do the first 2 episodes of Limitless. And it seemed to be like such a generic show in the first 2 episodes.
Generic,
and it reviewed so badly. Like it reviewed awfully. Like it's on Metacritic, it's like 55%, I think. Because for some reason these fucking critics only watch the first episode of a TV show and they judge the entire thing off of that. Like they kill it. Like, which I hate. That is like one of my pet peeves with criticism in entertainment, when people don't finish a product and then they fucking review it. Like it's like literally the worst thing ever. It's what the world has become though, because people want like minute to minute things. They want minute to minute updates on this stuff, because Limitless, like it takes a while to find its feet, like maybe 2 or 3 episodes, but the way that it is so creative with the way that cause it's shot, like it's every single it's kind of similar to a show that you're going to mention later, which I'm not going to say the name of, but the way that like every single episode is kind of different and in its own way is unique, because of the way it's shot and written, and also because the performances in it are so good. Like Jake McDormand, if you don't know the story behind it, he got the role because Bradley Cooper liked him so much in American Sniper, because they were in American Sniper together. Like Jake McDormand's role is very, very minor in that film, but Bradley Cooper liked him as a person so much that he decided, okay, I want you to be the person that is the main actor in my new TV show, because Bradley Cooper has a lot to do with the TV show. He's even in it for a couple of episodes. Because also, obviously the movie, it's like he was the main character in the movie.
But the movie is well done as well.
It is,
because I started watching the show because I really enjoyed the movie.
Yeah, sure. We watched the movies together. We watched the movie together. Yeah, we rented off Extravision, if you remember that service. But I just think that it's only got 1 season. It's not a very long show. It's on the entire thing is on Netflix.
Yeah, it would be higher.
Watch it.
It would be, if they had more seasons, they would just and the quality stayed the same. I would have had it higher up on my list.
It would be higher on my list too, and it's it's already high enough on my list. I just think that it's only 25 episodes long. I'm speaking like I can't get my words out anymore. It's only 25 episodes long. It's all on Netflix. It's such a bingeable show. So because I'm not really going to talk about it when it's on my list, because we're kind of talking about it now. Yeah. The reason I love Limitless so much and why it's going to be so high up on my list is because So if you don't know this about me, when I was in 6th year of secondary school, I tore all the ligaments in my ankle, like a couple of months before the leaving cert. Before the leaving cert, actually. So I was I was stuck out of school for like a month. I wasn't talking to people because like everyone was in school and stuff, and everyone had their own lives going on. I was like feeling kind of down, like shit about myself. And then Shane had told me to watch this show, and I think I'd watched an episode or two of it before I had hurt my ankle. And then I was like, okay, I'm just gonna watch it all now because I just wanted, I'd been watching 2 or 3 movies a day to that point. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna watch this TV show because why not? Like, so I watched the entire show, and man, it literally like changed my perspective about like life. So like the main reason that I'm doing the course I'm doing now, which is like film and screen media, is one of the reasons I did that is because I love this show so much, and I realized actually school is bullshit. I don't like it. It's a load of crap. I want to do stuff like this. Like I want to make films. I want to make entertainment stuff. And Limitless is one of the reasons behind that. And I think that if you're looking for some inspiration about, maybe you don't know where your life is going or whatever, like, and you enjoy television and stuff, this might be a show for you because it's such a good show, man. I'm just gushing all over it. Like,
it is.
I literally am. I forgot about the list completely. So because I'm just gonna move on to my number 6 pick because that was your number 7, wasn't it? Yeah. So my number 6 is Band of Brothers. So I've already kind of talked about this show on the podcast before. Yeah. You should watch our I think it's podcast number 3 if you want to get more on that. So I'm not really going to talk about it too much. It's basically a World War II miniseries about American soldiers in Europe during the Second World War. So it starts from D-Day and then it goes on until it goes on to VE Day, which is Victory in Europe Day. It follows this one company, oh my god, Easy Company, that's it, Easy Company, It just follows them, their experiences during the war and their like brotherhood, because they're essentially like brothers after the show, like by the end of the show. And it's a true story as well, if you didn't know. And it's just, I think the true story TV shows are always affects me a bit more, like, because it's the same with films as well and books and everything, because you know what actually happened. Like when something bad happens to the characters, you're like, that happened in real life. And it just makes things so much more affecting. That's why for me it's 6th. It probably should be higher realistically on my list, but it's because another show very similar to it is higher up, and I had to make a choice, and it was very difficult. It was like choosing between children. Yeah. So, which maybe is possibly easier for some people, but not for me, because I love them both.
Yeah,
You've seen it. You watched it recently.
Yeah. Well, like, I mean, I wouldn't compare it to choosing between children because I just choose to kill both.
Fair enough. You also haven't seen the other show as well, so you bastard. But yeah, so basically, it's one of those shows that I actually think is better watched the second time you watch it, because the first time a lot of characters are introduced straight away, and it's kind of hard to like, get invested with all of them. But then by the end, you're so invested in everyone that when you go back, you like all that downtime where they just introduce all these characters because you know who everyone is. So I think, definitely watch it. I'm not really going to say much more about it. We're just going to move on to Shane's 6th pick instead.
My number 6 pick is The IT Crowd. So this is awesome. It's a great British comedy. It is based on it's three characters. Well, 3 main characters in a IT room in the basement of a big corporation. Yeah. And it's such a great comedy. They go through basically the characters could end up fucking anywhere in the show. Like they kind of, because they're so awkward and not like the 2 guys are very awkward and not great with interacting with other people. They kind of end up in very weird and unusual situations, and it kind of it's just such great comedy that it's like I wish they had more of it, like, because it's very short how much they like. I mean, there was a huge gap for when they actually brought out the final 2 episodes, because it was like it stopped for like 4 years. I
think something like that, a couple of years.
If I'm not mistaken, but they brought it back because people wanted it finished, to see it at least finished, like
the finale as well, man. I think it might be the best finale I've ever seen in a comedy show. Yeah, possibly. It's just the way that they do callbacks to like all the jokes in the show, and it's just it's so good. And also, man, Douglas as well. Douglas is like the most hilarious character, because I've seen the show too, if you didn't know. otherwise I wouldn't be talking about it. But Douglas, man, is like, I think he's what makes the show for me. He's such a fucking funny bastard. Like, he actually, like, because I think when he's introduced to the show, it just gets so much better. My own opinion, like.
They were trying to make a American remake with Joel McHale and the same fella who played what's his name?
Moss.
And but it was just a big disaster, and it was like, why would you? It's just. Why trying to make an American remake of everything is just pointless.
They're trying to remake it again. Actually,
are they?
Yeah, they are. Yeah,
American version.
Yeah, an American
version.
Fuck off. I think Moss is involved in it again. I don't know what's gonna happen.
Honestly,
I don't know if Joel McHale is. Joel McHale's TV show was cancelled, and I don't know if he's doing anything at the moment. So
they should
from Community fame. If you
they
don't
should
know.
just remake it, but British. No,
they
not
should just
remake
make more
it.
seasons.
They should just make more seasons. Yeah,
Netflix, man.
Don't
as far as
remake
Netflix, they've picked up so much like Black Mirror.
But Netflix is very American, because Black Mirror became American in season 3.
It's so Americanized. To be honest with you, one of the main reasons it's not on my list is because it became so Americanized, or like it's on my honorable mentions. I think that show, even though I do like the new seasons, but I think season 1 and 2 were like.
It's not on the list. We're not talking about it.
I know. I'm sorry, Shane.
Right.
I'm just like that as a person. So, are you done talking about the IT?
So I guess just a quick summary. I really think you should watch it. It's one of those comedies that really drives you in.
Yeah, I think I agree so too. I'm not even a big fan of comedies, and I love that show.
Yeah,
it's great, man. So my number 5 is Limitless. That's where it is on my list. I'm not going to talk about it, because I've already talked about it. So Shane, you're number 5.
You already fanboyed about it.
I love it.
My number 5 is another comedy, Community, which is with Joel McHale, who I just mentioned for being in the American version of IT Crowd, who he did a fucking disastrous job in.
I forgot that Community was so high on your list.
Yeah,
literally.
No, but Community is great. It's a contrast of different it's a diversity of different characters that go together in a study group in a community college, and it's kind of like how they kind of end up clicking together, and they basically they just go through these different kind of situations, and like it's very difficult to sum up some comedies because it's the comedy is what gets it, but you don't want to give away the comedy. Like,
yeah,
it's kind of one of those things where it's like they have just some great episodes in it, which which I'm not going to say
mostly in the first 3 seasons.
In the first 3 seasons, but it would be higher up if they just had it as a good well finished product, but they just had a few. They had a few disastrous seasons, and
it's definitely worth watching. I'd say though, like 100%. I think that the first 3 seasons it's the best run that I've ever seen a comedy TV show go on. I'd say, like in terms of just like levels of quality. Like the first 3 seasons are so good, and then season 4 because Dan Harmon left, and then season 5 and 6 because the characters just started the cast just started falling apart. It's just so good. Like, and it's got so many like famous actors in it, like Donald Glover, Brie, Alison Brie, Joel McHale. What's your one's name? Gillian Jacobs. Gillian Jacobs. That's it. Yeah, she's in a Netflix show as well. And obviously then it's got Chevy Chase, who is like one of the better characters in the show, but also
he didn't enjoy
he's a person of controversy.
That's the thing. He honestly, he's one of the best parts of the first few seasons. He's one of the best things in the first few seasons, like, because he's just a great character. Whether or not your man enjoyed making it, he just did a phenomenal job. And it was like I was very disappointed to hear that he was leaving, that he had left the show, and that he didn't enjoy working with him.
The reason that he left as well is because of Dan Harmon. Like, because Dan Harmon left season 4. Well, Dan Harmon was fired because he didn't get along with Chevy Chase. Apparently that's the main reason. I'm not really sure if it 100% was, but then apparently Chevy Chase leaves at the end of the season 4 because him and Dan Harmon hated each other so much.
Yeah.
So it's quite interesting in that way. I think that honestly though, it's one of those shows, maybe inconsistent at times, but honestly it's like a masterpiece of comedy, I would say.
Yeah.
It's definitely up there. So my number 4 then, because we'll just move on swiftly, is The Pacific. So as I was talking about my 2 children analogy, The Pacific is my slightly favorite child, but only because I've seen it. I've seen The Pacific 5 times, I think. Seen Band of Brothers 3 times. No, I've seen Band of Brothers 4 times. I actually have no life. Like, it's bad. Or maybe 3 times. I can't remember.
No argument.
They're not very long shows. They're both only 10 episodes long. Like, they're almost like each episode is almost like a mini movie. So Band of Brothers probably is better quality wise, but the Pacific is just more nostalgic for me because I watched it more, or I watched it first, even though it came out after Band of Brothers. They're not. The two shows have nothing to do with each other. It's just that they're made by the same people. But the Pacific is basically another World War II miniseries, but this time it follows people that fought in the Pacific Theater of War, which is like the Americans versus the Japanese, which was a much more brutal conflict than the war in Europe. It was like it literally was it was probably where most of the fiercest fighting was seen in the war, especially in Iwo Jima and Okinawa. And I think that so obviously you can tell I'm a bit of a history buff for stuff like this. Maybe not as much as I was when I was younger, but I wanted to be a historian at one point, which is I wouldn't even fucking think about that anymore. But I'd love to make a historical show someday like this. But honestly, the Pacific. If you're looking for a really good World War II TV show, I think this is where you should go. Like, again, it's about real people, so it's a lot more hard-hitting when people get injured or killed, or, when people suffer in this show, you feel it a lot more than with other shows that aren't, like, real life. That's just how I feel anyway about these kind of TV shows. Also, one thing that it has over Band of Brothers, it's the way that it only really follows 3 main protagonists, which are James Badge Dale is one of the protagonists anyway. He's been in a lot of movies recently, like 13 Hours, Spectre. He was in one of the X-Men films as well, I think. I can't really remember. He was in some superhero film recently anyway. He's a very good actor. But the fact that it only really follows 3 protagonists, it's a lot more focused as a story. And also then it kind of like you still care about other characters outside of those, but because it's more focused, you almost you can almost like just enjoy the show as soon as you start it. Whereas with Band of Brothers, sometimes there's so many characters. So that's why I probably put it ahead. But honestly, just watch both of them; they're great. So your number 4, Shane?
My number 4 is Game of Thrones, which some people are like, oh, that should be number 1 now, boy.
I love Game of Thrones too.
But it's such a great show, and I just have more passion for other shows. It's why it's not so high as high up on my list. But I don't even know if I think I even have to explain Game of Thrones because I feel most people have seen it. But it's a
fantasy epic.
Epic, yeah.
Based off of George R. R. Martin's books, the Song of Ice and Fire, fucking load of fucking books. Can't think of the term. It's actually as well because our lists are just bleeding into each other at this point. Because it's my number 3, so we're just gonna talk about this as a joint thing like we normally would.
Do you notice how most of the stuff I say is just a bit higher up for Jason? Like
slightly, well, maybe not towards the end, but we'll see. But our lists are quite different. I think only like 4 shows are on both of our lists.
We have a bit of a contrast. Anyway.
We do, yeah. You have more comedy. Mine is more like kind of serious stuff. But this is one that we both share. Game of Thrones. Yeah, it's a fantasy epic kind of about Westeros, which is like made up country. Like
it's made up.
Like
what?
It's pretty much inspired by places like England, Spain, like places like that. Like it is very inspired by the real world and like real history. So like there's a lot of historical events that inspire a lot of the events that happen in Game of Thrones, which is so if you like historical stuff, this is kind of a good mix of like fantasy and history. Honestly though, I think that like at this point you've either watched Game of Thrones because they're almost finished. Like there's one more season to go. You either watched it or you have no interest in ever watching it. But what I will say is that like if you're kind of on the fence, maybe you haven't watched it yet, maybe you're thinking about it. If you are a fan of like massive epic battles, if you're a fan of not even that, like what the show is really famous for, which you would probably agree with me, is like its political themes and kind of political conflict.
Yeah, that's a huge thing. It's like it's conflict and it's kind of the the contrast of it's basically different locations, kind of like like for the first few seasons some of the characters you follow have never met each other and some haven't even heard of each other, like so, but it's like it goes back and forth, but it's like it connects everything kind of together. It's like they're all leading towards the same end game, whether or not they even meet each other at all, it because they might die off, you never know. And
maybe Game of Thrones is famous for that.
Like it just kind of it neatly ties everything together and brings it to it kind of leads it towards an end game kind of a thing, even though you don't necessarily know what it's going to be.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that what a lot of people are drawn to are just like the kind of the interactions between characters, like characters out politicking each other. Which is kind of, it's maybe moved away from that in recent times a bit more because the books, they've caught up to the books and they're kind of moving away from the books a bit, because it's something you should know. It's based off of books, so sometimes maybe like at the start it's very, very heavily follows the books and then it slowly moves away from them. So if you only read the books and you think, oh, I don't need to watch the Game of Thrones TV show, you should, because maybe you might get pissed off because things are changed, but it's actually getting to see something that epic come to life on the big screen is like, it's on the same level of like a Lord of the Rings or like a Harry Potter. It's just crazy that they can do something like that. And also George R. R. Martin's writing is like in that same bracket. It definitely is. So your number 3, so Shane.
My number 3 is Parks and Recreation. My final comedy, I swear.
I swear, boys.
I swear, Mom. Well, Parks and Recreation, I mentioned it before on our third podcast, and which Jason watched for the fourth one.
3 episodes. I picked up another show though. So.
But I started watching it because I was a huge fan of The Office, which I gave a brief mention. Where it is, it's like it's based in a kind of a government location and follows this a group for Parks and Recreation, and in this made up town, and it's in this fiction town that it is, and they just kind of like how they go through their lives and how it kind of developed kind of their how they go up in the government as well, but it's not about that. They develop it, that develops so it improves the comedy as well. Like, so basically it's nice to see like some characters in it, the characters just contrast well with each other, and it swaps between. It's like, they have Leslie as the main character you're introduced to, but she doesn't necessarily end up being just the only. She ends up just being one of like just all the secondary characters, because everyone's just a secondary character once it goes through, which is the best way to have it, because you're not just following one character. I mean, you're just following everyone kind of contrasting with each other and kind of making this kind of bond in the government, and kind of like, what the problems with it, and kind of a bit of a satire kind of American kind interpretation, of how some people, would, how their political views and stuff really kind of go are a bit over the top, and how they have to deal with them, and it's kind of, it brings in opportunities for a lot of comedy.
Yeah, I've only ever seen the first 3 episodes of it. I need to watch more of it.
Yeah.
But Shane, like, first time we talked about it properly after I'd watched a bit of it, he was like, "Oh yeah, it's like I prefer it to The Office."
Yeah, and I really enjoyed The Office. I really did, but I'll admit when I'm wrong. I thought I called bullshit when I thought.
Someone told you, didn't they, that
someone said the Parks and Rec was better, and I was just like, oh, well, it is. And I was like, there's a reason The Office isn't on my top 10 list, because Parks and Recreation just blew me away.
It's a big statement to make, in fairness, because like Office is a beloved show, but I think Parks and Rec is like, just from my own knowledge about like the TV shows and stuff, that it's like reached that kind of god level of comedy that people talk about. So shows like The Office and that, and like the IT Crowd would be in that kind of bracket. Father Ted, another really good TV show. They'd all be in that bracket. Parks and Rec is probably up there as well. Even though I would say the first season isn't a great introduction to the show. I didn't really hear
Parks and Recreation, to be honest.
A lot of people have started to talk about it more now recently. But I think because Chris Pratt is such a big star now, because he's obviously in Parks and Rec as like not a main character, from what I could tell.
He's more secondary starting off, but he's kind of like he just cues in with everyone else. His comedy contrasts with everyone else, and that's the way it should be, and the way it's right. Like, and it's like I mean, it's not the only comedy that does it right. It's just one of those that it's incredibly funny, like, and it's just and the characters, you really grow to love them.
Yeah. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So shall I move on to my number two? I'm not going to talk too much about this for, I'm not going to say. But my number two is The 100. So we've already talked about The 100 a couple times in this podcast. God, the 100 episodes for our podcast did badly.
Oh, in our podcast, yeah.
It's a good podcast as well. You should check it out if you've ever seen The 100 because it's one of the better ones we've done, I would say, so far. So The 100 is, I'm just going to give a very short synopsis. I'm not going to talk about it too much because we're going to move on to our number ones in a minute, and I want to talk more about that.
I have another number two.
But I know you have another number two, yeah, exactly. That's why I don't want to talk about it too much because we got stuff to talk about still, but so basically, yeah, the 100 is a post-apocalyptic TV show on the CW.
Yeah.
Which is basically set 97 years after an all-out nuclear war destroys the Earth, and basically a load of people survive on these arcs. Like at first, they're 12 different countries, space stations, and then they form together to make one arc where like race and nationality doesn't really matter that much, and it's more just about survival. And really, the best way I could describe the show is that it is a show about survival. It's a show that's still airing currently. Season 5 is coming out at the moment.
And the show is brilliant.
It's so good.
Season 1 was its weakest, and it just got better from there. I mean, it was the first half of season 1. Just pull through it, and you will grow to love the show, because when it gets into season 2, you're just like, what the fuck has happened? This is so great.
It's really so season 1 they seem to play it safe a bit at times, but then if you're worried about a show playing it safe, this show does not play it safe.
Yeah.
It does some stuff that you think a show on the CW wouldn't normally do, even though I think that CW really has its shift. It's it has really like the 100. The 100 started out a bit it looked like it was going to be a generic TV, a generic teen show.
You were very questionable about season 1.
Yeah, the first half of it anyway. Second half was good.
You were like, oh, what, after they kill, you were kind of scared that they were just going to keep characters alive because people loved their romance or whatever. You just was too scared that it was just too much of a romantic story rather than an actual adventure.
Basically, Jason Rothenberg doesn't give a fuck about your feelings, and he'll kill off anyone he wants, and I love him for that, because that's what a TV show should do. So yeah, I think that I'm not going to talk about it for too much because I want to talk more about my number one. So what's your number two, Shane?
So my number two is iZombie. iZombie is actually brilliant. It's actually one of those shows where my sister actually introduced me to this. It was I'd seen logos for it before, and I was like, oh, it just seems like, it seemed, pardon my phrasing, a bit too girly kind of for me, just from how it was kind of
a generic CW show back in the day.
Yeah, it just but the show is not that. It just so happens to have a female main character. That's all it is.
So it's such a good show.
It's such a good show. All the characters you really love in it, and even the villains, you actually love them, even though you mightn't understand, you don't agree with what they're doing, but you just you know what, they actually do such a great job.
It's actually one of those shows that, because I've started watching it now, I've watched the first 2 seasons. It's one of the only shows where when I watch it, I don't hate any character in it. Every single time I'm like, oh, I might start hating this character, they just turn it around, and I'm like, oh man, it's I love this show so much. It's so I think that it's a lot so they've taken kind of I don't want to say it's because it hasn't ripped off this show, but it does kind of take the Limitless formula a bit.
It has the formula, but I haven't actually explained the story. So basically, iZombie is, it's basically the main character, Liv. She's after going to this. She's a doctor, and she was kind of dragged along to this boat party, and they were in the boat party. People were kind of experimenting with drugs, and this one drug was getting passed along, and it just happened. And it happened to make people go crazy and rave around the place. And she woke up the next day. One of the I'd say villains kind of in it. He ended up scratching her, in it, and she ended up waking up in a body bag, and she grew a craving for brains.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of the thing where she found she had an enhanced ability for every time she ate someone's brain, that she would be able to see, she would see visions of their past, and so she was working in a morgue, and she ended up helping out a detective, Clive, with his investigations, and she told him she was a psychic.
Yeah.
Which is kind of, it's like, oh, how would you believe that? It was kind of funny how they brought it, how she managed to how they managed to convince him, but but it actually, there's such great chemistry between them two in it, and it's like, how they helped it to, how they solve cases. It's kind of is solve cases through that kind of formula, which is similar to how they do in Limitless, as you said. They kind of use an ability. A character has an ability, and they're able to they're able to solve cases better because of this ability.
In fairness, it is quite like, but the way you said it there, it is kind of like something that has been done a lot. But I would say that what kind of differentiates it is, like, in the case of like Limitless, it's the way that it's shot. Like, the different director every single episode has like a lot of creative freedom
kind of to comic
do it.
Look,
yeah, exactly, yeah. Like, they have a lot of comedic moments.
It's very colorful.
Yeah, but then the iZombie does it differently because it's changed by the way that her basically, like, she takes up the like personality of the person's brains that she eats, and like the way that they do things and think about things and stuff, and that's what changes the show a lot. So for me, one complaint that I would kind of have about the show is that sometimes Liv's character can become a bit unbearable.
Because that's the one thing, but they have secondary characters that can help balance her out a bit.
They're not even secondary characters. They have like 6 main characters in the show. I would agree with you in terms of that.
The other characters balance her out, because Liv can be, because the ability she gets, because of the personality she gains, because of the brain she can be a bit. She can gain unbearable personalities.
Yeah.
And she kind of goes. She gets too into it, and she doesn't really. She can't really control. She doesn't really try to control herself to stop, acting too much like him. Whereas, like, other people who contracted the zombie virus, kind of were able to kind of hold back in their personality, kind of try and maintain their personality, where she just kind of goes meta into their whole personality.
She just kind of lets it go. Well, she kind of has to, because she's looking for visions to solve these crimes, whereas in other characters maybe aren't, because they just are trying to survive.
Yeah.
So I think, do you want to jump into our number one? So
our number ones, yeah.
I'll go first. So my number one is a show that Shane mentioned earlier, which I can't believe it's so low on your list. It actually hurts me as a person. So my number one is Lost. So honestly, I just, like, I don't really know what I can say that's not been said about the show before, because it was one of the biggest shows in America in like the mid 2000s. Like, from like 2004 2010, which is the run of the show, it was one of the biggest shows on television. Like, if you think of a Game of Thrones or a Breaking Bad, this is the level that Lost was on in terms of like popularity back in the day. Because it's for 6 seasons, it just stayed. A lot of people say the quality goes down a lot. I really disagree with that. Like, I remember when I first watched it, I think I've seen it 3 times fully. The first 2 times I watched it, I remember not enjoying the later seasons as much as the early seasons. But then going back to rewatch it, I think that the later seasons are a lot more focused because they're shorter. And even though there is like a couple of weird elements in them, because it does definitely get a bit more sci-fi as the show goes on. Like, supernatural stuff kind of starts to happen a bit more, because basically, as Shane mentioned earlier, it's about a group of survivors from a plane crash that crash on like a mysterious island, and the kind of supernatural mysterious elements start to reveal themselves as the seasons go on, and that's why the show gets a bit odd after a while. But I think, honestly, if you can watch season 1's only 25 episodes long. If you watch season 1 and you enjoy the way that they set up stuff and you like the characters and everything, I think you should continue on the show. It is quite a long show. It's over 100 episodes.
Yeah.
So it's an investment, in fairness, but you will find that if you actually invest yourself into the show and you throw yourself into it, you will get something really special out of it. Because I think that, unlike a lot of shows on this list, there is nothing like Lost. Like a lot of these other shows are kind of interchangeable with other TV shows that are kind of similar, even though I would say that you get kind of a different experience with all these different shows, like, as in they're all very different TV shows to each other.
They're all very,
but Lost as a concept, maybe not as a concept, but in execution is so like what's the word, unique. Like, I think that the way that they managed to keep this level of quality with the characters and the story and everything for that long is like crazy to me, because most shows like The Walking Dead have so many ups and downs, whereas in this show is like it's so consistently good. Like you really get a sense of like you're experiencing everything that the characters experience, and you're kind of like you're not really sure about a lot of things, and you're kind of discovering things as they discover things, which is I think that something unique that only really a television show can do, because it has more time to develop. And that is what the show Lost is. It's a developed world with developed characters. And I think that definitely, if you're looking for something long to watch, this is your stop, I think. Even though the show that Shane's about to mention, I would also recommend. Too.
So my number one was also mentioned by Fish beforehand, which is The 100.
Yeah.
We already gave an explanation of 100. It's basically 12 acts going together and blah blah blah.
Post-apocalyptic. Bad things happen.
But I like what really, because I started the show when it was going towards the end of season 1, because when season 1 was wrapping up. So I started watching it, and I got Fish to start watching it too, and I just find that they have so many. Basically, it's kind of like you could compare it to Game of Thrones in a sense.
Yeah, you could. It's more sci-fi than fantasy.
It's more sci-fi than fantasy, which is the big difference between the two. But and it's also their modern speakers kind of more. Well, although there'll be some characters like they go onto the ground and it's not, and they uncover like that there's actually people surviving, and these people will have found a unique way to survive. So they kind of go back. A couple of 100 years, actually a couple of
their society is like the society they would have had like in medieval times, or maybe even before that. Like, so it's very tribal,
and they kind of ways you kind of uncover why they are the way they are, because of situations because there was experiments pushed on them as well, so they're kind of a bit touchy about any bit of technology and anything like that. But it's like it's like how they go. They find war to be the best solution to solving conflict.
Yeah.
And so basically, it's trying to fit in some people on the Ark who are very modern.
Mm-hmm.
In with these people, and it's kind of like how they kind of connect together. And as the seasons go through, it's kind of like the whole universe gets more. Universe kind of gets more and more connected with each other.
It does. Yeah, it becomes like one cohesive unit almost. Where there's like a meld of like older societies and newer societies, and it really is. It's such a lived-in world, I would say. Like more so than most TV shows you'll watch nowadays, because it's like, especially on the CW, I think it's like one of the main shows that's really like changed people's opinions on the CW as a network.
Yeah.
Because it's so unique. Well, and maybe not unique. It's a pretty cool concept, but stuff like that's been done before. But I just think that the way that everything is developed, like the world and stuff, with all the different characters, like it's got some of the best characters I've ever seen on TV shows. Like the characters like Murphy, Kane, they're so well developed. They've got such. It's a type of show that it will make you hate a character, then it'll make you love a character. And then it might make you kind of hate a character a tiny bit, and then you'll start loving that character all over again, because it's just if you're looking for a character study show,
because there's some great character development in it.
It does, man. It's top notch.
I feel like I've said that about nearly all the shows I've listed, but
in fairness, but this is like, it's your number one, so it's the best. It's the best at everything. Exactly. All right, so I think we're gonna start wrapping up. So wrap up. Yeah.
So basically, guys, if you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, please click the subscribe button. Yeah. If you haven't liked yet, slap a like on this video.
And leave a comment as well, because I'm actually really interested in seeing this. Leave a comment with your top 10 TV shows.
Yeah.
Because I found it so hard to make this list. Like, I had to cut out so much stuff. Like, so many beloved TV shows that I've spent constant hours watching. Like, and I think that really with television, it's like, it is about opinions. Like, you may hate all the shows that we've listed, you might love all the shows we've listed, but I think that like, leave a comment about what your favorites are,
so comment below and let us know. And Fish and Chips are out.